Frosted Flakes, Star Wars timers, new Londoners from Texas, and pilgrims of the Mayflower. And welcome to the next bright white heating, quarantine angsting, and too cool for schooling episode of FROSTPUNK 2. Last time where we left off, our grand steampunk utopia of New London was suffering from numerous deficits of essential resources due to the growing demand exceeding our stagnant supply. From comfortable housing and farmland yields to supply of natural materials and consumer goods. Worst of all, the cool-headed citizens suddenly broke out into hot-headed anger when frozen homeless bodies started piling up on the streets. Determined to lose no time in human capital, I immediately set on building new hospitals to thaw out the homeless human popsicles for free and started constructing more housing districts. Though it was not easy, as our prefabricated supplies and sales tax funding had a hard time catching up with our government demand. To temporarily tackle with the growing epidemic of pneumonia, common flu, and tuberculosis cases among our workers, and ensure my relations of the Pilgrims Party are away from thin ice, I propose a quarantine law that will isolate the diseased persons within specialized housing areas and forego the stop or suggestion of tagging the sick with a contagion badge. Who knows if the stalwarts would choose a 6-pointed star as part of their contagion badge design. In exchange, I negotiated with the Pilgrims' close political allies, the Frostlanders, and promised them to pass a law regarding the wasted heat management. Under their proposal, the excess heat spewing and radiating from the factory smog, boiler furnaces, and public toilet sewage can be recycled back to residential home radiators via conventional heat pumps, thereby saving costs from public heating demand and cutting down on their utility bills. However, some residents were uncomfortable having unfiltered effluent gases, especially from smog byproducts and biowaste methane, sticking up their households. In spite of my best efforts to keep the city warm as a rooster cocks heart and stuffed like a polar bear's fatty liver, the population started to show doubtful mistrust over my stewardship and feared that when the coal stockpiles are reduced to pebbles and the city will be erased by the whiteouts, all of humanity and possibly the biological life in this miserable cold snowball planet will become extinct, and no one will be alive to remember New London's legacy. Thus, to regain the trust of my people, I promise the stalwarts I will construct a new, advanced blasting coal mine that will use powerful ammonium nitrate explosives to break down in its strikers like coal on the surface and subsurface as quickly as possible. Even though it comes at a cost of reducing massive amounts of toxic natural gases from below and possibly risk high squalor of nearby districts as multiple blasted urban debris rains down from the sky and punch holes on everyone's roofs. I almost promised the stalwarts that they can pass their own agenda, and they propose a paid essentials law that will reward workers with a high efficiency and overtime bonus, therefore boosting our resource extraction rate even further and promoting meritocracy within our city. In our news, sorry guys, still got pneumonia. Okay. In other news, due to the government overspending and diminishing sales taxes, the Pilgrims came into my office to propose a new law that will switch the production from perishable goods to higher priced, long-lasting, durable, and reliable goods that will last a lifetime, thereby reducing both demand in the consumer marketplace and boost sales tax revenue. In exchange for their allied stakeholder support, I promised them to build an eco-friendly moss filtration tower that will use the power of natural carbon fixation and absorption to filter out the toxic smog. While I was struggling to keep the population alive, a young student named Sue Miller on the street was reading what looked like an anthropomorphic tale about bunnies. As she was struggling to read this hopping tale, she innocently, or rather brashly, questioned why no folks came over to mug the poor rabbit of his personal pocket watch and was skeptical about the former existence of the currently extinct fauna that had died from their lack of adaptability to the frost. Maybe someday she will become a celebrity novelist who will write summertime themed books about epic battles and wartime action, with multiple hot, steamy, buxom heroines and steely metal knights in cold, dark armor. Just as I was expanding my state enterprises and affordable housing, a group of angry parents from both the Frostlander and New Londoner factions were having a heated debate instead of breaking the ice over which public school curriculum would be best for their children's preparation of the future. The frosted parents from the cool-headed hippie community claims that kids should not be forced to have their heads ground with useless numbers and theoretical knowledge, and advocate for the education of practical ethical knowledge that will ensure future survival of the human race, starting with allowing adult supervised school trips into the Frostlands to forge the edible winter-resistant plants, kind of like a summertime camping trip, but with snow. The parents from the urbanized middle-class New Londoner community persisted that the children should be taught materialistic knowledge like mathematics, economics, ethics, and engineering, and should be updated according to the latest breakthroughs in all fields of science. That way, they can grow up to become future contributors to the New London society and innovate new ideas to ameliorate our socio-economic living standards through technological advancement. Feeling appalled by the Frostlanders' distaste in science and the fact that they want to expose our children to the dangerous, cold, and predatory Arctic wildlife like polar bears and dire wolves, I mandated that all schools should focus on the sciences to both boost research development and secure a technological future for our children. Just as I thought I was done dealing with the cold-hearted Karens and hot-headed Chaz, a small coalition of beer-grinding FROSTPUNK came up to my office and complained about the empty housing districts being preserved for quarantine emergencies and demanded the government deregulates the mandatory quarantine protocol and pass a more libertarian law that will place responsibility onto the individual to avoid infection and refrain oneself from spreading the disease to others. Realizing that this law will not cut the ice with most of the populace, and knowing how uneducated humans are both incredibly stupid and dangerous when it comes to public health control, I decided to refuse on passing such a law and liberally chose to throw their sick-ass ideas into the fiery decontamination furnace. While planning out a future construction of an elevated skyway to boost the cargo transportation of coal from the abandoned miner's coal shaft, a 90-year-old former shipwright came up to me and complained about how the doctors from the teaching hospital want to skin him after his death so they can use it to graft new skin for their gangrene-infected frostbitten patients. Due to the lack of ethical laws regarding body donations and the possible disinterment of informal burials, I will plan on passing federal laws to block access of claimed deceased bodies for medical research and organ transplantation, and hopefully stop body snatchers from grave robbing and killing random people that sell their cold corpses to medical professors for profit, just like the serial killers Burke and Hare. As of right now, our city is mostly recovering from an epidemic scourge and is beginning to make economic uprise in consumer goods production and materials extraction. But before the New London government continues on with their administrative duties, we need to discuss how NGO factions and society at large itself can be a source of ethical relativism and how their influence can have positive and negative drawbacks to ethical decision-making. Alright, but first I need to soothe my throat with some very hot cocoa that my Frostlander team has found during their coal transport envoy trip. Thank you, Frostlanders. Even after 45 years, this cocoa is still fresh. Hot cocoa mixed with reindeer milk. Okay. Moving on. Now, what are the two remaining types of common influences on ethics? Well, we got NGO factions. See, work culture or organizational culture can influence how stewards behave and thus influence their own perceived and expected norms of conduct for all faction members. Moral standards set by other businesses and organizations can become the basis for ethical practices and behaviors for managers or stewards. Some organizations may urge other business places or governments to act ethically, such as building a factory inspectorate to increase safety levels for all dangerous workplaces. Professional and elite class of engineers, doctors, and inspectors have developed their own codes of behavior, which are rigorously enforced through their overseeing managers, security forces, and penal wardens, for example, such as breaking up the protest through strike breaking for the purpose of removing any uncooperative workers. Expulsions from the professions are possible if breaches of conduct are found and strictly made intolerable by higher officials or administration. Though there may be different variances of influences across different generations of sites and cities, their rules should be evaluated in the perspective of ethical merit. And last but not least, society at large itself. But hang on, let me get my cocoa first before I continue. Anyway, citizens of certain class, socioeconomic state, or culture tend to gather together and form group social relationships with each other, forming communities or more radicalized factions. Family bonds and home environment is a major influence on how personal convictions of the captain/stewards can develop their own ethical standards. For some leaders, religious upbringing and contact with other religious organizations may also influence their assessment on ethical decision-making. For instance, faith-based captains/stewards may pass caring laws that provide public soup kitchens and healing sanctuaries for those too poor to afford food, heat, and adequate health care. Educational background of a leader may also provide an ethical reference point. Though there are not too many schools educating people on ethics back in the Victoria area, some knowledgeable leaders may be educated in university levels of philosophy, such as the invisible hand of economics. The view of appropriate ethical behavior may be influenced by dominant culture, political views, and economic status. For instance, stalwarts may tolerate mandatory reform schooling for at-risk youth. A new London engineer graduate may promote technological progression and mechanization of labor. Social pressure from advocating activists, public tensions, or radicalized factions can also impact government decision-making. Thus, decisions need to be evaluated based on the pluralistic social landscape of the human survivors. And we'll leave this off right here. We're going to discuss about ethics and morals later on. And with that, we will now continue with our job as steward. Oh, shit. It may have gotten a bit warmer in like a couple of days, but it's still very much chilly, like liquid nitrogen out there, man. It's negative 40 degrees Celsius, or if you're American, negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, let's focus on trying to boost our... What should I boost on here? Plus 6 goods, which means I can get 25 heat stamp per week. Alright! Oh no! Crap, this one's running out soon within 8 weeks. That's not a good sign. I need to look for some more prefabs. Or maybe make a prefab factory. Maybe around this industrial sector. I need 6 tons. Will this be enough? No, not over here. 2, 3, 4. Okay, I guess I'll have to frostpunk a little bit more. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright. Oh yes, the food situation. We need to expound on that too. I don't want to put any more emergency shit. Trust is a little bit too low right now. How much do I have? People work at the food district. Okay, 600 people. Oh, that's lots. Let me check the laws first. Oh yes, of course, I remember. I need to go to the ethics. Yes, and enact some rules over burials, and also restrict the access of dead bodies for medical research. We don't want to have a Burke and Hare situation again. Mission secret. Oh, okay, this one's now enforced. Okay, you can actually switch between different laws, but you have to pass it through a vote first. Oh yes, boss filtration tower. Okay, but first we need to research the bio waste. And we also need to gain access to this tower here to build a logistical district. That's sweet. I think that should be enough. I need more cocoa. Okay. At least our housing situation is resolved. Oh crap, what's going on now? A rowdy funeral! Oh, I was gonna pass that! Damn it! Steward, there was a shameful display during a wake yesterday.
How could you take her from me? I can't live without her! Cookie lumps!
Sorry, there's been a terrible mistake. This is your wife. She is this man's wife.
Give me 5 minutes. Not finished. You're one lucky guy. Now, where's Lucille?
Some of these families want a traditional burial, while others complain about the wasteful antics and said the body should be donated to further the city's healthcare. This could save people's lives, is what's answered with, I don't want to rest my father's soul. As the more people got heated, they eventually came to blows. In the aftermath of the fight, the body disappeared, and each of the suspects the other of foul play. Sally, this is not an isolated incident. Maybe we need to call the movies to get everyone on the same page. Ah, yes. This is what I'm talking about here, fellas. Let me tell you about a little bit of a historical artifact known as the Mort Cage. Yeah, boy, I can find it. Oh, etc. Let me look through my archival library first. Body snatching. Mort safes. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. See, what these poor paupers should have done is to encase their coffins with a mort cage. A mort cage, or a mort safe, is a construction designed to protect graves from disturbance used in the United Kingdom, back before the Great Frost. You see, a group of corpse profiteers known as resurrectionists actually supply explosive anatomy with dead bodies they unburied from their graves without anyone's permission. This was due to the necessity and also the high demand from medical students to learn anatomy by attending dissections of human subjects, which was frustrated by the very limited allowance of dead bodies. For example, the government has a greater control on the supply of corpses, and they can only supply dead bodies of executed criminals, suicide victims, and sometimes dead orphans. In the British authorities, even though they strongly condemn any sort of body snatching in a grave robbery, they still turn a blind eye to any grave likely to advance in medical knowledge. They kept publicity to a minimum to prevent people from realizing what was happening. However, the cases of grave robbing that came to light causes riots, damage to property, and even fatal attacks, such as the one we're experiencing right now. Now, what are the precautions that the people try to take to prevent their dead bodies from being donated to science? Well, for the rich, they can afford some heavy table tombstones like vaults, mausoleums, and even iron cages to prevent grave robbing. However, the poor couldn't afford these things, so they have to resort to placing some flowers and pebbles on graves to detect disturbances. Well, considering the lack of flowers, I guess they'd probably just use a bunch of sticks. They dug heather and black branches into the soil to make disinterment a little bit more difficult. Well, in the sense that they provide warnings against grave robbery, but not necessarily a physical barrier against grave robbery. Large stones, often coffin-shaped, sometimes given as a gift from the wealthy man in the parish, were placed over the new graves. Friends and relatives even took turns or hired men to watch graves for the hours in the darkness, which I should do when I hire the sellers to keep an eye on the burial grounds. Watch houses are sometimes erected to shelter the watchers. One watch house in Edinburgh has a 3-story castellated building and windows. Watching societies were often formed in towns, one in Glasgow having 2,000 members. Many Kirk session houses were used by watchers, but graves were still being violated. This is where the mort safe comes in. The mort safe was invented around 1860. Sorry. These were iron or iron and stone devices of great weight in many different designs. Often they were complex, heavy iron contraptions of rods and plates, padlocked together. A plate was placed over the coffin, and rods with heads were pushed through the holes in it. These rods were kept in place by locking a second plate over the first to form extremely heavy protection. It can only be removed by 2 authorized people with keys. They were placed over the coffins for about 6 weeks, then removed for further use when the body is sufficiently decayed. Yet sometimes societies were formed to purchase them and control their use with annual membership fees and charges made to the non-members. Yeah, that's basically the gist of how these people should protect their graves. I mean, I'm not victim blaming them, okay? I'm just asking you to be extra cautious right now. Or maybe I should pass a law mandating more states for all the graves out there, right? We need to reach a citywide consensus. You have 30 weeks to pass either harvesting funerals or ceremonial funerals. Harvesting funerals. The deceased will be harvested and their healthy body parts used to support the city healthcare. Unharvested remains will be incinerated and their ashes transferred to their relatives. The research is slightly increased. Disease is slightly decreased. You just can't be snatching random and dead people off the freaking graveside to their heart's content. At least not without their family's permission, okay? There's a limit for everything. Okay? This is why the Anatomy Act was passed after the Birkenhead murders. Okay? According to this act, you can only claim a dead body if nobody else claims the body for like 48 hours. If that 48 hours has passed, then all the medical schools can like go freaking crazy and grab the dead body. Ceremonial funerals. Bodies must be buried untouched after a traditional funeral to show proper respect to the departed. Relatives must be allowed to mourn with dignity. Oh, and also the grave should be protected by a morgue stay for protection against these freaking resurrectionists. Alright, trust laws is reduced from the deaths. Oh man, I've been talking a lot, guys. I need an extra sip of cocoa. Alright, oh yes, we need to build a new food district. 8,200 more people. Ah man, I just realized something. Alright, I should build a new coal mine here. Okay, let's see, untreated coal. Oh, advanced back to coal mine, yeah. Only 120 heat stamps. Oh, it costs 300 people here. How much are we gonna last? 278 weeks. Yeah, I think our coal will last a long time. Well, let's just worry about the food first, okay? Because this was short stock. This is only gonna last for, at least this one will last 256 weeks. But still, it's better to have some stock first. So let's focus on food. Okay, I guess I should cook it a little bit more. Not eat. Let's find a food district. Yeah, it. And put it over here, because we have infinite numbers of food. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Check mark. Anything else? Let's see if we can build a new sky. Oh, wait, no. I think I used up most of the prefabs, damn it. I really gotta stop doing that. Ah, Scheiße. What's going on now? Let me guess, it's someone that eats all the berries in the hot houses. Cut from the toilet, paid essential. Ah, shit. Economics. Steward, now that we are charging for essentials, some unemployed families are unable to afford basic necessities. Work goes to the worriest. If the people were passed up, it's their own dang fault. They should put their work instead of expecting the city to solve the problems. Claims one of us scholars, okay? Sounds like the protestant work ethic I have learned back in my old days in business ethics area. Protestant work ethic. Yeah, I think I had it somewhere in my archives. There it is, work ethic. See, during the 20th century, or 1905, a pioneer sociologist named Max Weber proposed the idea of protestant work ethic in his book, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. See, according to his view, a code of human values and moral principles is derived from faith and spiritual strength, particularly from the Protestant faith, or Calvinism. He claims that the desire to work has always been part of the human nature, and just considered a purpose of one's life, thereby giving rise to early capitalism back in the 16th century. Thus, they claim that any person who is unable to work is seen as having temporary misfortune, or just having a deficiency in the individual character. Hence, it is assumed that work is a holy obligation to both family and for the benefit of society. Work in itself is therefore worthy, admirable, and rewarding, and as it generates profits and accumulates private property. Maybe the faith keepers and the sufferers do have something in common, after all. Thus, Max Weber enforces the belief that hard work, diligence, thrift, and busyness are desirable as traits of society. However, as always, there are always criticisms of all sorts of theories, and criticisms against the Protestant work ethic states that actual research has shown that pre-industrial capitalism may actually have originated from the 14th century Europe. As back in during those times, they were constantly fighting on internecine wars, raising the farmers' wages following the Black Plague, and they also increased urbanization of towns due to rising populations of skilled craftsmen and blacksmiths. Individuals also have other life purposes unrelated to work or disciplinary piety, like, I don't know, going to freaking brothels or participating in gaming tournaments, and maybe having a little bit of fun at the poker and having a good time with your friends, you know? Come on, where's the fun in that? What's the use of going to work if you don't reward yourself afterwards? There may be external factors about why someone is unable to work or discouraged from working. Like, say, I don't know, a bad economy, insufficient pay, terrible working conditions, a fucking work accident that left them to be freaking amputees. And you find out, that's Mr. Stalwart's delegate. By promoting a protested work ethic, you're actually encouraging the toiling for food and stocking up on supplies, as opposed to promoting consumption and therefore consumer sovereignty, which we kind of needed to increase our freaking sales taxes and therefore our freaking government funding revenue. See, this is why we should have long-term government programs to exist to support invalid citizens who are unable to participate in the workforce, such as care houses for amputees and sustainable healthcare. Short-term programs offered temporarily for those currently unemployed, such as workhouses, prosthetic limbs for amputees willing to work, and extra rations for the ill. Both programs have positive and negative effects on traditional work ethic. Labor markets may be distorted, leading to a rise in unemployment. Citizens nowadays expect more from their government to provide more support to their economic needs, yet also expect improvements to their working conditions and raise and fringe benefits, such as extended shift compensation. Critics argue that these programs may result in lesser motivation to work and more desire to work less. But I kind of beg to differ, because freaking change, especially during the big damn frost. Anyway, others are more measured and say we should provide it with a weekly allowance, like an EI, or unemployment insurance. Yeah, let's go with that one. If we can't offer them work, we will give them a budget, like universal basic income, up to the use it wisely. What should we do? Allocate allowance to those in need. Paid essentials provide less heat stamps income. Oh, right, of course. Let them hand for themselves. Handouts make people helpless. Yeah, let's provide some universal basic income. I don't like my citizens dying damn cold. Unemployed to receive pittance for purchases of incentives. Don't think that's pittance. Pittance! Unemployment insurance. Yeah, let's go with that, okay? Universal basic income for everyone. Yeah, we're making it the greatest socialist capitalist society that has ever lived in this post-apocalyptic hellscape. Anyway, what was I gonna do again? Ah, damn it, you got me distracted. Talking about freaking work ethics and stuff. Oh yeah, food district. Yes, we're expanding on that. How much we're getting right now? Only 20 people a week. Alright, that's not so bad. Oh, Jesus. Someday if I end up being freaking bad, I want my universal basic income as well. Anyone else? Okay, no complaints. Alright, let's speed up. Yeah, okay, good. Oh, thank goodness. Okay, everything's in surplus here, okay, guys? Okay, we can do it, fellas. We can do it. Let's build this skyway. Okay, let's see here. Oh, I forgot on the frost that teams. Okay, yes, we have to build just for district. Oh, yeah, I forgot. We need to solve our coal situation here. I want everything to be on freaking surplus because I want to stock up in case we have a freaking whiteout. You know how much I hate having to erase so many mistakes with whiteouts. That's nothing coal mine. Oh yes, we need 300 workers. Let's see here. What am I going to do here? Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, I think that should be enough. And then we are going to do coal mine. Advanced blasting coal mine. Alright, let's do it. Another one. Right over here. No, not this one. I'm gonna build it over here. Presto changer. Okay, that's gonna be right out within 1 week. Oh, come on. Damn it. Alright, let's get this over with. Let's wait for it to run out for a moment. Alright, well, we top out 2 billion profiters. As that research increases relations. Woohoo, yeah. How many workers I need to build a new hothouse here? 400 workers and 80 heat stacks and 40 prefabs. Okay, let's work on this one next. Let's reduce heat. We'll work on it. This will go to surplus once I build a new hothouse. Okay, gotta prepare for everything, fellas. 80 heat stacks. Okay. Okay, let's see. Promote, baby. Let's make some fun here. 142 heat stacks. And then we'll use it to make a new hothouse. Bingo! Build it right over here. Okay, then we research on the moss filtration. Resources, workership. We're cracking through. Oh, filtration towers. Hold on, guys. That's good, Coco. Okay. Moss filtration towers. Structure that circulates the ambient air through natural moss that absorbs and filters impurities. To put this in more scientific terms, a moss filtration tower is an urban, large-scale air purifier infrastructure, also known as a smog tower, that implements green air filtering technology with harvested and cultivated Arctic moss, which acts as both as an air quality indicator and a bioactive pollutant absorbent with frost and desiccation resistance. Unlike leafy plants, moss is generally a type of terrestrial non-vascular plant that lacks roots, stomata or leaf pores for gas exchange, a protective waxy cuticle layer, and an internal xylem and phloem system for water and sugar nutrient transport, respectively. Consisting mainly of microscopic terrestrial photosynthetic cells, moss obtains their nutrients through interaction with the ambient air filled with water vapor, particulates, and atmospheric gases by direct passive surface absorption, thus acting like a natural organic tissue sponge that captures and accumulates various tiny airborne substances, including man-made toxic pollutants in the air. Some moss species carry microbial films that can easily catabolize the absorbed pollutant toxins into harmless substances and continues to retain them within their cellular matrix, thus acting as an active biochemical filter medium for atmospheric cleaning. As the name suggests, moss filtration towers use large moss panels on its outer wall surface or within its indoor air vents to capture and filter as much significant air pollution as possible. The historical uses of moss. For many centuries before the Great Frost, moss has been used in a variety of cultural and commercial applications, including agriculture, construction, aesthetics, medicine, and cuisine. Moss lawns and gardens were a popular natural serene aesthetic trend in traditional Japanese gardening since the Heizan period in the 6th century. North American tribes living in circumpolar ice regions, such as the Nordic Sami people, use moss as bedding, house roofing, and clothing to keep themselves warm from the cold seasonal frosts. Some traditional Nordic Russian and Eastern North American tribes would pack moss between the gaps within the log walls of their cabins and longhouses for thermal insulation against the harsh cold winters. Their ability to absorb large amounts of water also makes moss an excellent natural absorbent material for domestic culinary and medical items such as diapers, wound dressings, and menstrual pads. Tribes in the Pacific Northwest of America and Canada would use moss to soak up excess moisture in foraged foods for drying, and even pack them within their food baskets as a natural form of food preservation. Decaying carbon-rich peat moss in stagnant marshes, bogs, and pools has been mined as domestic cooking and heating fuel, soil additives for horticultural gardening, and a source of bog iron in metallurgy in many Northern Hemisphere regions, such as England, Canada, Ireland, Scotland, and Russia. Considering that moss has been scrubbing CO2 and oxygenating the planet for the past 470 million years, moss has gained a reputation as the new natural air cleaning sensation in both the alternate and real-world green urban space community. What other positive characteristics does moss have that makes it such a great filter? Well, as with all non-vascular plants, the high moisture retention and large surface area to volume ratio of moss tissue allows them to absorb large amounts of CO2, nitrogen oxides, VOCs or volatile organic compounds, and microscopic dust particulates. Like vascular plants, moss can convert CO2 into sugars and release fresh oxygen into the atmosphere as a byproduct in the photosynthetic process, thereby functioning as biomechanical lungs for the fossil fuel-powered city. Some species of moss promote symbiotic microbial colonies that can denaturify harmful NOx compounds into nitrogen gas, thus making them more effective than the phytoremediation of vascular leaves in eliminating smog pollution. VOCs from synthetic indoor chemical products such as glue, paint, perfumes, wood varnish, and lamp oil can also be easily metabolized into lesser toxic substances by bacterial colonies residing in certain moss species such as sphagnum. Moss can absorb up to 30% of airborne fine particulate matter that are small as 10 micrometers in size and can absorb higher concentrated levels of toxic metal particulates like lead, cadmium, and arsenic compared to other vascular plant systems. As a result, squalor is decreased by 30% per tower installed within the city limits. When the moss filter smog tower activates its rapid filtration mode, it boosts the air circulation to a higher speed rate and recirculates the polluted air through the moss panels multiple times before releasing them out through the exhaust, thus increasing the air-to-filter media exchange rate for maximum air purification. Through this rapid filtration ability, the city can theoretically and temporarily further boost the squalor reduction from 30% to 80% per tower. Moss does not require much sunlight nor high humidity to function properly, meaning that the moss filtration smog towers can operate with low maintenance even during low luminescent polar nights or in dry snowy desert environments. The moss filtration towers require very low amounts of heating and artificial lighting for maintaining optimal growth conditions for Arctic moss, and could implement a thermal snowmelt collection system to keep the moss consistently hydrated without any powered irrigation required, thus further optimizing filter maintenance. In addition to filtration towers, some moss filter panels can also be designed as installations around windows, building facades, and ventilation ducts of air-to-air heat exchangers, where they can absorb excess humidity in the air to suppress mold growth in warm, damp indoor spaces. Just like how canaries in coal mines can indicate presence of deadly flammable and choking gases, moss can act as biological indicators that can assess the quality of atmospheric air within an urban setting. Compared to pinpoint chemical tests that can only measure the level of pollutants, including toxic heavy metals, the moss can provide a more continuous stream of information through its constant changes in chemical composition within its tissues. Moss bioindicators therefore provide a relatively less expensive alternative to pollution assessment compared to long-term chemical data point collection that would require highly expensive and super-sensitive equipment. Laboratory chemists can, for example, indicate the level of NOx gases within the smog using a special chemical colorimetric Grice test to measure the levels of nitrates and nitrites within the moss tissue. Alternatively, a soda lime test can help directly indicate the presence of absorbed ammonia or carbon dioxide, as well as indirectly assess how much NOx compounds are broken down by denatrifying bacteria. Even without chemical tests, the change in moss color from bright green to dark brown can provide a quick visual indication of fluctuating toxic pollution levels over a period of time during periodic changes in the moss filter media. How does the moss in the Arctic survive such extreme hostile environments? The secret lies within its 4 special abilities. Anhydrobiosis, or life without water, a biological dormant state that occurs during extremely dry spells that can last for years, decades, or even centuries. The Arctic moss produces protective trehalose sugars and LEA, or late embryogenesis abundant proteins, that shield the moss cell walls from cracking and its internal cellular volume from shrinking under desiccation. Upon reintroduction to water, the protective molecules are broken down and the moss can resume its metabolic and photosynthetic processes. Cryoprotection. High solute concentration of sugars and sugar alcohols like trehalose, mannitol, or xylitol act as natural anti-freezing compounds that protect the moss cell walls from structural rupture damage caused by nucleating ice crystals within its cytoplasm during extreme freezing cold spells. Metabolic shutdown. Moss preserves internal energy reserves by undergoing suspended animation, meaning that all biochemical functions are slowed down to a halt before entering into a state of dormancy. And finally, cellular repair. Upon thawing and rehydration, DNA enzymes engage the repair mechanisms to fix up any genetic material damaged by extreme frost, including homologous recombination and double-strand rejoining. A great example of extreme Arctic moss that could be used in filtration towers is the Syntrichia canenervis, or the steppe screw moss. This hypolytic extremophile species can be found growing underneath rocks in extremely dry and cold Arctic environments. This extreme moss species was first discovered and presented to the Linnean Society of London in 1858 by English pharmaceutical chemist William Mitton, who became one of the most renowned expert authority on bryophytes, which includes mosses, liverworts, and hornworts. The steppe screw moss can be found in extremely dry areas of China, Mongolia, Siberia, and other parts of Central and Southwestern Asia, as well as some parts of Europe and North America. They can also be abundantly found as a soil crust in the arid lands of the Tibetan regions, Antarctica, and other circumpolar regions. The research on its extreme physical traits has shown that the steppe screw moss can tolerate extreme droughts during its dormant state, and can rehydrate itself by absorbing various water sources such as fog, snow, and rain with its microscopic leafy hairs before re-engaging in photosynthesis. Under extreme laboratory stress tests, the steppe screw moss can withstand extremely cold temperatures of liquid nitrogen as low as -196 degrees Celsius or -321 degrees Fahrenheit for up to 30 days, and can be easily stored at -80 degrees Celsius or -112 degrees Fahrenheit for up to 5 years. Upon thawing, even the dehydrated specimens can recover very quickly compared to the hydrated specimens. This means that the steppe screw moss can become dormant even during whiteouts or prolonged cold spells, and can still resume normal operations upon reheating and reactivation. The steppe screw moss is also highly resistant to heavily polluted atmospheric conditions, such as toxic industrial smog rich in 95% carbon dioxide. Given its namesake, this moss can also function normally even at low atmospheric pressures, making them ideal for filtering air in high-altitude cities. Of course, we can't be sure how this moss filter concept can work in this alternate world without mentioning its real-life counterpart. The real-life moss filtration towers. In the actual world, the idea of moss being used as a pollution bioindicator started out in 1968 by Swedish environmental researcher Åke Ruling and ecologist Gurman Tyler, who examined how lead concentrations in woodland moss was inversely related to their distance from urban city centers and directly related to the amount of polluted precipitation received from nearby urban districts. Since the publication of the research paper, multiple universities in Europe had been experimenting with moss as alternative scientific methods of indirectly monitoring smog pollution, eutrophication, and volatile organic compound emissions. However, it was not until urban city project developers and architectural engineers Peter Sanger, Liang Wu, Dennis Honis, and Victor Splitgerber sprung upon the idea of a Moss filter air purifier after discussing their worldwide travel experiences with living within smog-polluted cities such as Shanghai and compared them to cleaner European cities like Germany. The founders created the eco-friendly tech company Green City Solutions in 2014 to combat urban pollution and constructed their first prototype moss filtration tower, dubbed the City Tree, in Jena, Germany. Since then, multiple urban trees were installed in various European cities like Amsterdam, Berlin, Brussels, Glasgow, London, and Paris, as well as some spread throughout Asian territories like Hong Kong. These city trees, or robot trees, are quasi-natural and urban bioactive air cleaners that took inspiration from scientific studies on the physiological capability of moss retaining and breaking down urban pollutants, which includes public research papers by the Leibniz Institute for Trophospheric Research, the University of Applied Sciences in Dresden, and the University of Bonn. Their founders claim that city trees can absorb 80% of harmful emissions, including fine dust particulates and nitrogen dioxide, and uses the electrostatic properties of the moss, similar to a microfiber filter cloth, to attract the charged dust particulates. The company also constructed their own vertical hypno moss farm to help maintain a fresh, clean supply of filter media for their biomass filtration towers. In spite of their product name, the architectural shape of these early city trees are more akin to vertical installations of moss walls or panels that face towards the windward direction of the oncoming pollution. The polluted air is circulated through the moss panels by electric solar-powered fans and has a rainwater collection system that keeps the moss moist without requiring constant city maintenance. Newer designs consist of a hexagonal or prismatic vertical stack of moss garden pots up to 1,600 per tree that takes up lesser urban space, constructed mostly from wood for aesthetic purposes, and could allegedly remove harmful virus pathogens lingering in the air. Each city tree has internet-connected sensors that detect, monitor, and transmit the data to a monitoring screen that displays the air quality in various city districts, thus eliminating the need for laboratory chemical lab testing. As you might have already known, this emerging new green technology does not come without its skepticisms and criticisms, even from the top experts themselves. Even with those extreme traits, why are modern filters like paper, cotton, or charcoal preferred over the newly formed moss filters? Though Arctic moss can survive extremely cold temperatures, moss filters must still be well heated and insulated from extreme cold to prevent dormancy, lest their pollutant absorption and breakdown becomes inactive. In other words, the air filtering performance of moss filtration towers can be affected by extreme outdoor meteorological conditions, which could either hinder or halt their air filtering, pollutant absorbing, and metabolizing activity. Moss filtration is thus only most effective for indoor filtering of mold spores, microscopic dust, and sawdust debris, but not so effective in mitigating outdoor smog in urban city streets and roadways. Compared to vascular plants like deciduous lime trees with the same photosynthetic surface area, naturally living moss cannot effectively absorb much larger volumes of heavily polluted CO2-rich air, and their dust and soot particulate filtering performance capabilities are inferior and inadequate compared to high-powered filtration systems. If the weather turns into a dry spell and no precipitation occurs for a long time, the filtration towers must rely on automated hot fertigation systems to regularly moisten and nourish the live moss with nutrient-rich lukewarm solutions, because inactive dry moss cannot absorb toxic pollutants effectively and must be immediately thrown out to prevent dust and mold accumulation. To properly assess the effectiveness of the air purification process, the moss samples from every filtration tower, or moss wall, must be periodically collected for chemical lab tests to indirectly measure the changes in pollutant levels. Due to a lack of existing advanced laboratory equipment in the early 20th century, there was no consistently accurate scientific method in evaluating the air quality improvement of moths during long-term activity, meaning that some results would remain inconclusive. Modern meteorologists and atmosphere scientists thus remain skeptical on the effectiveness and cost efficiency of moss filtration infrastructure, perceiving these gimmick structures to be only good at cleaning the air within its vicinity, but not significantly having an impact on the overall chemistry of the urban air within the entire district, let alone the whole city. Technicians operating the moss filtration tower must constantly remove and replace the moss panels before they turn completely dark brown or dark gray from the heavy absorption of smog, dust particulates, and carbon soot. Without a steady supply of fresh moss, the organic filtration towers risk rotting and dying from overloading intoxication within the moss. In addition, the moss must also be thoroughly cleaned of any mold, as they can be detrimental to the air purification process. This sanitation process would require populating the moss gardens with mold-eating insects such as springtails, book lice, soil mites, and certain species of fungus beetles, a rare commodity considering that most of them either died during their hibernation period or had migrated deep below the permafrost to escape the apocalyptic winter. If rapid filtration mode was activated without cleaning out the moss panels, this could lead to widespread dispersion of spores, detritus, and dust around the districts, where they can either lie dormant in the snow or enter through open windows or vents and cause respiratory illnesses among the residents. Rapid filtration could also blow loose moss off the panels and could actually worsen pollution if used multiple times without replenishing or cleaning out the moss. As with any criticisms towards outdoor smog filtration, climatologists emphasize that greenhouse gas emissions reductions should be the main goal in combating squalor-inducing pollution, and does not want venturing investors and urban activists to be swayed by sequestration and carbon capture technologies. Residents and experts alike would argue that installation of filtration towers would disincentivize governments from imposing penalties and fines against heavy polluters, and would actually encourage industries into producing more wasteful emissions without consequence, even if the moss filtration towers were to wither away from the excessive absorption of toxic particulates. Just like what happened to city trees during its deteriorating decade-long run. There are several controversies surrounding city trees ever since its launch. For example, in a 2021 protest against the moss-filtered city trees, residents of Cork City of Ireland pelted the controversial installations with fast food and covered them with posters that criticized the city trees as a wasteful expenditure of taxpayer money, which should have been spent on providing free lunches to school children. A Labour Party politician named Peter Horgan criticized the Cork City Council of spending money on the most expensive benches and scored them for not installing regular public footpaths, park benches, and actual trees as a less costly alternative measure. Climatologist expert John Surdew contested the 80% dust reduction claim by city trees and read the independent study by Leibniz Institute for Tropospheric Research himself. As it turned out, their research only claimed that moss was effective at absorbing 30% of dust within indoor settings, but their outdoor filtering performance was dependent on the meteorological conditions. Professor Surdew also argued that planting hedges along the public sidewalks and roads would have been more cost-effective at removing particulates than installing costly moss filtration walls, and emphasized the need to focus on tackling the root cause of pollution rather than mitigating its harmful effects. In a 2018 study on the city trees in the Netherlands, the Amsterdam Council decided to remove the installations after a 1-year trial period, when they discovered that the city trees only absorbed 1% of the microscopic particulate matter, as opposed to 20% claimed by Green City Solutions, and had actually spewed back the noxious gas fumes as quickly as it absorbed it, worsening the pollution to higher levels than it was before their installation.
What do the others people want? Ventilation tower. Structure that uses high-powered mechanical fans to disperse foul in the city. You know, I want to save up more on heat, so... and also reduce the squalor, so let's research this idea. More funds, I suppose. Ah, shit. I guess I spoke too soon. Well, the right side, at least we don't have to worry about the housing. Oh, but any people care here from that day. All right. Do I have to at emergency shifts? Okay, I don't have to. Okay, phew, okay. Yeah, that's all the emergency shift, fellas. We don't want too many people dying. Oh, right, of course. Yeah. No more prefab, so I guess we have to demolish it. Oh, look, we minus one call. Okay. Okay, phew. All right.
Do not succumb to wasteful fashion. A well-made coat is always in style.
Ah, yes. Don't throw your coats away, ladies. I mean, the steel skin is very good at it, alright? Keep those pants tight and fully ironed, okay? Waste makes unnecessary haste, fellas. Excess fertilization. Push fertilizer are used far beyond normally prescribed levels to quickly boost crops. Fruit production efficiency is extremely increased, but disease is also significantly increased as well.
Oh, Marge, I'm giving birth to a food baby.
I feel like something crawled inside me and took a crap.
Bart, don't use that word. Oh, crap.
It's diminishing. I don't understand. So we're not that desperate yet. Yeah, right now, let's focus on building a new logistical station. 200 prefabs. How much we're making per week? 11 per week. God damn it. Let's build a new industrial district and have it make some prefabs instead. 3, 4, 5. No, not there. Not there either. Yeah, 6, 7. Where's the 6? Okay. Okay, while we're at the topic over here, let's discuss about the basic of ethics. Now let's review what exactly is ethics. Well, ethics is a branch of philosophy that deals with judgments on human morality, derived from the Latin word ethos, meaning way of living. Now, do not confuse it with morals, which is the consciousness and rationale behind human judgments of good versus bad, or right versus wrong decisions made to achieve a desired goal within a given context. Now, there are 3 components to ethical decision making. There's circumstance, which is description of the situation that the leader or agent must engage in. For example, slow construction process and inefficient resource gathering. Then there's the agent, the leaders who are in charge of making moral judgments and decisions, whether it be good or bad, to achieve a desired goal. This agent evaluates the behaviors done to accomplish such goals through good or bad means. And then there's the action. Those are the intended goals and the visible means or acts that only the moral agent knows. For example, completing construction of a generator in time or surviving a great storm. And I'll just put this diagram over here to explain the 3 basic components of ethical decision making. Okay, here you see the circumstance or the situation, and the agent. Let's pretend this is the captain or steward. This captain or steward is responsible for performing a certain action. Action consists of both the act and the goal. See, both the act and the goal must have a principle of integrity, which describes the whole action is good. The principle of integrity states that if you're going to perform a certain act to reach a certain goal, the whole action is supposed to be good, meaning the act is good and the goal is good. Thus, that means the good end should not justify a morally bad means. And once you perform a certain act to reach a certain goal, you have to face the consequences. See, life is unpredictable, as we already see in this game. Choices may be foreseeable or unforeseeable, leading to desired or undesired consequences. This affects both internally for the leader and externally for the citizens, or anyone outside the city bounds. Ancient Greek philosophers believed that every consequential action will affect society as a whole. For example, the action of theft involves an ignoble act of taking someone's property with the goal of personal gain, without committing to hard work. This, in turn, leads to the consequences of impoverishing the victim and also corrupting the criminal's character. This is the reason why a society of thieves and also murderers and liars, and cutthroats cannot thrive. And I'll leave it at that. I'll discuss about the three ethical theories to decision making right after we figure what the hell is going on down here. Nothing lost. Bio-waste hothouse. Steward, our bio-waste hothouse has begun cooperating with the people who forage for food additives in the Frostlands. On top of their regular duties, they provide with leaves, animal carcasses, and fish. See, I told you polar bear poo is gonna come in handy someday. In order to meet enriched compost, this will no doubt increase our food output and also reduce the heat demand for the hothouse because you can see the energy released from the bacteria breaking down the compost can also be used to help heat up the hothouse, okay? And don't worry, it's not gonna cause the whole hothouse to smell bad. As long as you have a very healthy mix of both greens and brown detritus matter, the decomposition of the compost should have a very earthy, smelly feel. So like a very putrid, rotten carcass and smell. Learned that from my archives on the Amish greenhouse building. Bio-waste hothouse produces more food thanks to forage additives. I say I see. Woohoo! Yeah! Woo! Ready back, fellers. The food bag baggers.
Hey there, folks. I got a delivery here for $1 worth of food. I mean, comically large amount of food.
Well, since they're producing more food with less amount of people, I guess that means I don't have to employ them into ships, right?
The hothouse will pay well for these maggots.
Both was decomposing the compost and localized threats of society. Oh, yeah, I forgot. We can pass the new law now. Yeah, let's work on our funeral situation and build some more cages around these goddamn coffins. But first I want to test both. Oh, what the hell? Oh no, don't show me those scars, man. Yeah, let's pass this one. Let's propose. So then there's not so many people supporting it. Let's negotiate. Let's talk to the Londoners. Let's vote for this. Okay, let's try a blast foundry. A factory where iron ore is mixed with accelerating agents and heated to very high temperatures, maximizing the output at the cost of noxious emissions. 250 in materials output. Squalor is increased, and also requires 60 heat demand, and 300 workforce required. Let's extend. Okay. Let's vote. Come on. I want to bury my dog in peace. I want to build some cages around some, coffins, baby. Come on. Nobody's that. Alright! Woohoo! 67. Woohoo! Alright, let's celebrate. With a funeral party! Yeah, that's how the mass funeral. You kept your promise and avoid unnecessary chaos in the city. Trust rises. Shit, I see. Maybe we can cut down over here. Not there. Let's keep it to around 100 this time, okay? Let's see. Is that enough? No, not exactly. We need 21 people. Okay, I suppose I could take a few people from the sawmill. Okay, I think that's good enough. Let's see. There we go. So here. Oh, but that's gotta be smaller. Let's not go here. Yeah, I guess over here. Okay, before we talk about the free ethical theories on decision making, let's check if there's any more complaints. The deck can't work, thus we shouldn't expend effort on them. Sometimes you can make use of the useless, okay? Why not? I don't know. Use the bio-waste hothouse as both a funeral home. You can bury your dead here and maybe put some plaques over, but also at the same time use their decomposing bodies to clean up on food production, huh? Justify. refreshing. Okay, we got the prefab zone. How much we're making? Dude, 22 per week. Okay. Good enough. Ah, shit. I might need to raise a bit here. Ah, shit, this one's running out too. Crap. I need to find a permanent source of coal. And fast. While we're waiting for this, let's discuss some ethical theories to decision making. Now, there are 3 types of ethical approaches to moral decision making. There's 1, agent focus, or character based. Those include personal virtue, self-interest, and character. Then there's the goal-focused, which are based on utilitarian benefits. And the third and last one is the ontological, or means-focused. This includes the universal ethics, individual rights, and justice, and holistic ethics. Regardless of which approach you take, each ethical theory demonstrates what leaders should do in any context, regardless of the origins, perspectives, or timing, where alternative universe where the whole freaking apocalypse happens, you know? Let's discuss on the agent-focused ethics. According to the personal virtue ethic, the moral agent is based on the leader's own behavior. It determines what character traits makes a good leader and postulates what character is built on desires, learning, and continuous practice. Virtues are good characters and vices are bad characters. Let's list the good characters, or virtues. The virtues are courage, generosity, honesty, transparency, fairness, excellence, self-control, wisdom, honor, and service. The bad character traits, or the vices, are cowardice, selfishness, deceitfulness, secrecy, injustice, mediocrity, overindulgence, ignorance, disgrace, and indifference. Now, what are virtue ethics? Virtue ethics is all about virtuous leaderships, which comes from the desire for human excellence and should be aimed by all people. And that's what I'm trying to aim for in this FROSTPUNK game. Now, what are the basics of virtue ethics? Well, an action is only considered right if a virtuous person would do the same action in the same circumstance. For example, motivating work efficiency without deception of false promises, regardless of direness of circumstances. The person itself should ask, does this action represent the kind of person I am or want to be? In a government setting, the leader, that would be the captain or steward, should consider how the decision would be perceived by their citizens and report it in free public press, and whether their decisions best represent the desired public image. That's why I always ask myself, do I want to be known as a tyrannical dictator or a messiah savior? Another form of personal ethics is ethical egoism. Individuals should act on their own self-interest ethics, thereby setting their own ethical judgment standards based on benefiting the moral agent itself. Most people will act for their own benefits and thus have a tendency to do what is only right for themselves. Humans have an innate self-preservation instinct for survival, and thus neurologically wired to pursue their own needs. However, they have to be careful not to venture into pure ethical egoism, because when you have pure ethical egoism, it means that the leader has no altruism. This in turn leads to greed and unchecked selfishness, which then turns to absolute order or absolute faith. Or, if one of the radicalized factions decide to take over the whole city, leads to like absolute tensions and an absolute takeover and absolute chaotic fluff-ups. Enlightened self-interest, however, allows people to be concerned for others as well as for themselves. In other words, a leader cannot survive alone without his citizens and vice versa. A strategic egoist, like me, seek relations with other needful and useful people to achieve one's own self-interest and accomplishments, such as a stalwart wants to maintain political power, or faith-keepers to promote one's own image as a messiah. What are the basic principles of pure ethical egoism? Well, actions are based on the leader's own self-interest only. Standards in ethical judgments of one's own actions can be set by the leader to benefit only oneself. And last but not least, altruism is not acceptable. Meaning that the captain would demand citizens to place the needs of their leader before themselves, and thus mandate obedience or devotion to the regime itself over their friends and family. Now, what are the basic principles of enlightened self-interest? Well, actions are based on the leader's own self-interest only. However, the leader should practice self-moderation of self-interest, with awareness that what is in public interest will eventually become interest of all individuals and groups involved. In other words, a leader should know what actions will result in reciprocal benefits, maximize resource extraction and progress without violating social custom and law. In other words, do not end up having your social license revoked for violating your social contract, such as allowing extra compensation of rations for 24-hour shifts, or paid essentials, and doubling rations for child laborers. We'll move on to ethics of carrying much to get it wrong. Well, at least I passed a few laws, which means the trust falls isn't like too much. Since
Okay,
you
Lord,
have some
little white
trust
guy.
exercises.
Right there. I got your attention.
Alright, that's fine. Try to turn off. Yeah, let's turn off for now, okay? We're only like losing 2 goods, okay? Maybe we should expand a little bit. I need to save some beats. The Frostlanders like you kept your word. They now look upon your rule more positively considering your leader of integrity. Relations with Frostlanders improve. Trust rises. I see. Let's research the last foundry next. Foundries. Factory where iron ore is mixed with accelerating agents and heated to very high temperatures, maximizing output at a cost of noxious emissions. To put this in a more industrial scientific term, a blast foundry is an industrial metal casting factory that uses a metallurgic smelter known as a blast furnace that accelerates the iron ore process by mixing the molten iron batch with chemical reducing agents, thus enhancing steel production output at the social cost of producing negative externalities such as carbon-rich greenhouse byproduct emissions and particulate pollution. The blasting process refers to the injection of highly oxygenated air from below the furnace to speed up and enhance the combustion process and decauterize the pig iron into more pure iron. Once the iron smelting is complete, the steel making process can then begin in the Bessemer vessel, where the remaining carbon impurities can be removed through oxidation by blasting large amounts of air from below, before the standardized amount of carbon can be remixed back into the molten iron to create the low-carbon steel suitable for a variety of industrial applications. Industrial-grade steel products such as automaton parts, construction girders, and heat pipe fittings are then forged in a process known as investment casting, or lost wax casting, so called because their inner wax pattern filling within the single-use ceramic mold, later replaced by other refractory materials such as rubber, plastic, or foam, is melted down and burned off, before the liquid steel batch is poured into the mold opening to be casted as a final product. Here's how the blast furnace process works. Before the steel-making production line can begin, iron sulfides or carbonates within the iron ore must be roasted in a hot air reverberatory furnace to remove any sulfur/carbon content in the form of sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide and convert the ore into iron oxides, which can be later reduced much more quickly and easily with chemical reagents. Common compounds used in roasting include malachite or copper carbonate hydroxide and galena or lead sulfide. High carbon coke fuel or pyrolyzed charcoal or petroleum roast the iron ore, and reducing agents called flux, most commonly limestone, are dropped into the feedstock inlet at the top of the blast furnace, where temperatures reach 1200 degrees Celsius or 2200 degrees Fahrenheit, while highly pressurized hot air is pumped by steam-powered blower engines into the bottom 2 years of the furnace. Hot air blast from the 2 years accelerates oxidation and removal of impurities in the form of waste gases or slag, while also generating sufficiently high temperatures to transform the iron into its liquid molten state. To preheat the air for hot blasting, hot exhaust gases from the blast furnace are redirected to downcomer pipes, where they are filtered by a dust cyclone fan to remove the solid soot particles. The filtered hot exhaust heats up a silo-shaped hot blast stove known as a cowper stove, filled with checkered bricks that act as regenerative heat exchangers. Once the cowper stoves are hot enough, the downcomer pipe is shut off and an intake of feed air is forcefully drafted through the checkered brick stoves to become preheated for hot blasting.
Both the hot blasting and chemical reducing processes create a chain series of continuous chemical reactions along the vertical columnar length of the blast furnace and generates countercurrent exchanges between the flux and Cox gases, which thus rapidly converts the molten iron oxides into pure iron. To better explain this blast furnace process, let's discuss on the main reactions that occur within the blast furnace. Starting with the hot blasting zone, oxygen-rich air mixes with the carbon from the coke, or pyrolyzed charcoal, to produce carbon monoxide and heat. As it envelops the entire blast furnace, hot carbon monoxide reduces the iron oxides in the ore progressively at each lower level to produce molten pig iron and carbon dioxide. At the top of the molten mixture, where it is 200 to 700 degrees Celsius or 392 to 1292 degrees Fahrenheit, iron-free oxide or ferric oxide is reduced to iron-2-free oxide or black iron oxide. At the middle lower level of the molten mixture, which is 850 degrees Celsius or 1562 degrees Fahrenheit, iron-2-free oxide is further reduced to iron-2 oxide or ferrous oxide. At the lowest level of the molten mixture, where it is 1200 degrees Celsius or 2192 degrees Fahrenheit, iron-2 oxide is finally reduced to pig iron, which may still contain 4 to 5% carbon content. As the iron ore is being processed, hot Cox gases, nitrogen, and flue gases are flown upwards to the top of the blast furnace, preheating the feed charge and decomposing the limestone flux, or calcium carbonate, into calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. Calcium oxide removes other impurities from the iron, usually silica, to form phthalate slag, which is mostly calcium silicate. Countercurrent exchanges and temperature-dependent equilibrium within the blast furnace allows the carbon dioxide to be reduced back to carbon monoxide by the high-carbon coke fuel, thus continuously fueling the iron ore reduction process. At the bottom of the blast furnace, or cast house, tap holes are drilled into refractory clay plugs to pour out the floating slag byproducts in a slag pot, and the liquid molten pig iron into a torpedo car, also known as a ladle transfer car. Once all the molten products are collected, the tap holes are plugged back with fresh refractory clay. Molten pig iron may still be contaminated with sulfides that can embrittle the metal, so it may have to be desulfurized with calcium oxides in a process known as lime desulfurization before being further processed for steel making. And now for the hardest and hardest part, the Bessemer process. Industrial steelmaking is based on the Bessemer process, invented by Henry Bessemer in 1856, in which molten pig iron is purified by rapid oxidation of excess carbon and other remaining impurities via air blown through the molten iron. Molten pig iron is poured into a special tilting large industrial vessel known as the Bessemer converter, which has a pear-shaped outer steel shell with a narrow spout and bulbous body. It is lined with inner refractory silica-rich clay bricks and other specific materials for different types of unprocessed pig iron. Once the molten pig iron has settled, a blast of air is blown into the bottom of the Bessemer converter to oxidize the excess impurities, especially carbon, forming slag, usually silicon and manganese oxides, that floats on top of the molten mixture. During this process, the progress of oxidation is visually monitored for a huge burning blue flame spewing out from the mouth of the converter, which showed that all the carbon has been fully removed. Carbon is added back to the molten iron at the correct 0.25% proportions and mixed with Spiegeleisen or ferromanganese alloy to remove some phosphorus, sulfur, and silica impurities. Once the molten steel has been formed, the pear-shaped Bessemer converter is tipped over to allow the buoyant solid slag to be skimmed off before pouring the molten liquid steel into transfer ladles, where they can transport and pour the finished product into disposable ceramic molds for investment casting or lost wax casting at the foundry. Why would they call it investment casting or lost wax casting in this final process? Though wax is often used to form a temporary model of the original product, Mold makers can use other materials such as clay, wood, or plastic to create the replica of the product, also known as the master pattern. Once the product replica is finished, a primary mold, or master die, can be made from clay or rubber around the master pattern. Otherwise, if the mold maker has access to an automaton milling machine, the mold maker can skip the master pattern step and directly machine a new master die independently from metal alloys of a lower melting point. A molten wax or melted plastic liquid is then poured into the master die to form what are known as wax patterns. The wax may be swished around to form a thin, evenly coated layer within the inner surface, or poured in fully and cooled down as a solid object. In some cases, a waxy or ceramic core may be added to provide spacing within the wax patterns. After the wax replica has been produced, additional desired wax patterns may be etched on or attached to a heating tool, such as around a central sprue or mold injection passage, to form what is known as a wax tree, thus allowing multiple replica parts to be later produced within a single casting. Any parting lines or cavity border lines and flashings or excess waste liquid can be rubbed off with the same heating tool. The ceramic mold, or investment, is formed around the wax patterns through repetitive coating, stuccoing, and hardening of multiple layers of various sandy powders and liquid slurries made from fine refractory materials such as silica, zircon, aluminum silicates, and aluminum oxide. A vacuum may be applied during the hardening step to accelerate the drying process and fill up any voids within the wax patterns. Once the ceramic mold is completely cured, the de-waxing process begins by flipping the mold upside down and heating it in a baking furnace or autoclave to melt out or vaporize the wax, hence why the casting technique is also called lost wax casting. Temperatures must be heated at very high levels as quickly as possible to prevent the wax from expanding within the mold and creating stressful cracks. Though some mold makers would drill holes around the investment to drain the wax out quickly and reduce the mechanical strain before covering them up with new clay. After collecting all the molten wax for reuse in newer molds, the investment mold is heated once again in the burnout process, usually between 870 to 1095 degrees Celsius or 1598 to 2003 degrees Fahrenheit, in which excess moisture and residual wax is vaporized, and the mold is compacted or sintered into a solid strong shell through intense heat treatment. This preheating step allows the mold to better resist against the hot molten steel as it thoroughly navigates around the detailed patterns of hollow space. After the mold is fully baked and sintered, it is positioned with its open side facing upwards and buried deep within a large tub or crucible of sand to keep it stable, before liquid molten steel is poured into the open orifice to begin casting. Once the steel has been casted and cooled down to a solid object, the investment is then shattered or divested with a hammer, though modern tools like a sandblaster or chemical treatments like freezing liquid nitrogen can also be used to divest the shell without risking physical damage to the steel casting. In the final finishing step, hand tools, welding machines, hydraulic presses, grinding cutters, and other equipment remove other impurities and fix any undesired defects on the casting that may need to be straightened out or reshaped as part of product quality control. If necessary, individual parts may have to be cut off from the sprue tree and the surface may need to be polished to eliminate surface roughness. The major positive advantages of a blast foundry: high efficient production rate. The blast furnace and Bessemer process help produce huge amounts of pig iron and low carbon steel within shorter periods of time and at lower operation costs. Versatility in high strength alloy materials. Low carbon steel products with less than 0.25% carbon produced from blast foundries can resist extremely cold temperatures of -75 to -100 degrees Celsius or -103 to -148 degrees Fahrenheit. Other high-temperature alloys, such as stainless steel and ferroaluminum, can also be forged within a blast furnace. Excellent product quality control. Investment casting provides smoother finished surface quality, sharper quarter angles, and higher complexity in casting with superior accuracy and precision in dimensional and geometric measurements, thus allowing more intricately complex designs to be easily casted in products such as construction materials, automaton components, prosthetic implants, and steam turbine blades. Mass manufacturing capability. Investment casting is so highly reliable, repeatable, and versatile in creating steel castings that no requirement of post-process removal of flashings or parting lines are necessary. Multiple identical machine parts can be casted from a single batch in investment casting, thus further raising efficiency in mass-produced steel manufacturing. Now for the negative disadvantages. High squalor from pollution. Every blast foundry contributes highly negative social externalities from its large emissions of TOX, SOx, and NOx gas pollutants and spews out solid waste through particulates. However, foundries could mitigate these marginal social costs of pollution and squalor with installation of chimney scrubbers and dust catchers. High energy consumption. Each blast foundry consumes huge amounts of fuel energy to power the high-pressured air blasting pumps for the blast furnace and the Bessemer converter, up to 60 megabtus per foundry. Limited steel production from phosphorus iron. The early Bessemer process was the acidic type, meaning that it could not deal with removing pig iron contaminated with high phosphorus content, leading to lower quality steel. Delayed iron ore processing from impure hot air. Excessive amounts of nitrogen within a hot air blast could delay the diffusion and oxidation of carbon from the molten pig iron as COX gases, thus requiring more time to decarburize the iron. Expensive operational costs and production time. Though blast foundries produces a higher quality finish than silica foundries, the investment casting process takes much longer to prepare, and the ceramic molds are more expensive and time-consuming to produce. The molding process can also become much more difficult and complicated if a core is involved. These production costs can include specialized tools, high-temperature furnaces, master die fabrications, ceramic materials, special chemical binders, complex molding process, and additional artisan labor to refine the wax patterns for more intricate steel castings. High upfront costs in new model production. Wax patterns need to be created for each casting cycle, and the materials cost and production time of each wax pattern can increase with complexity of the product design, unless the wax patterns are fabricated in a single batch. If wax patterns of a new product model are required, the mold maker would have to fabricate a new master metal die from scratch. Complications in product finishing. Though automaton machining tools can further enhance the surface finish of the product, the cost and higher quality control may greatly increase depending on the complexity of the product form and shape. And finally, limitations in product size. Due to the high cost and difficulty of casting with cores, investment casting is limited to mass manufacturing small to medium-sized objects like firearms, valves, and gears. Though large-scale investment casting is possible, it is highly uncommon, as casting a single large steel object can be very time-consuming, and its product weight is limited to below 1,000 kilograms or 2,200 pounds to prevent the ceramic mold from fracturing under its own immense weight.
But as I promised the listeners, I will research blast foundry, work on research this idea. Let's expand this a little bit. Here. Alright. No, okay. Fine, I'll build it here. Got no choice anyway. Okay, we should be done right now. So, okay, we got 20 frostliner tables. Okay, let's boost this up a little bit for connect skyways. Wait on a second. Now, let's get at the same points. Here. Oh, shit. We need 60 prefabs. Damn it. Okay, I guess we'll have to wait a little bit longer. Oh, yeah, of course. Right. Yeah, let's look at the new building. Hey, everyone stop. Okay. Oh, it's for housing. Moss filtration tower. Yeah, I think we should really need that. Okay, it's pretty minor, but it is growing, so... let's build a moss filtration tower for our people. Oh, right, I need to work here. So I forgot about that part. Why do I always forget about that part? We can reduce here. Maybe turn this off for a while. I think we're good here. Maybe increase a little here. And reduce it here. And okay, I think we're good. Maybe build it as close as we can. Boss location. Bingo!
One of our oldest citizens has passed away. All are invited to pay their respects at the funeral.
Alright, I'm gonna bring in some extra hot cocoa for everyone here. Alright, I forgot someone died. We shouldn't celebrate. Well, we shouldn't celebrate his death, but we should at least celebrate the life legacy and the contributions he made into making the society that we are right now. Crisis averted. Rapid infiltration, temporary, utilizes workers' maintenance, staff, they build service, good transportation, people making scholars. Let's do it. I said it. I hope my hospital attendant helps that many injured workers. Okay. Yeah, let's work on that skyway, shall we? Ah, shit, what's going on now? Is it about the boss rotation tower? 6 times the charge, the teaching hospital. Steward, Dr. Thomas Morton, a teaching hospital surgeon, has, for the first time, saved the life of a patient suffering from appendicitis by removing the diseased organ. And what do you know? Dr. Thomas Morton in this game is actually based on a real doctor of the same name and time period. According to his profile, he's an American doctor who was one of the first surgeons to successfully perform an appendectomy in America during the year 1887, the first year at which the Great Frost appeared in FROSTPUNK 1. Born in Philadelphia to an anthropologist named Samuel Morton, he received his medical degree from the University of Pennsylvania and serves as a head physician at the Pennsylvania Hospital, which was founded 100 years earlier by Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Bond. In addition to being the hospital's top historian, he is also an early advocate of observing strict antisepsis in surgery. He also has a brother who worked in the Union Army as a general, which inspired him to work as a military surgeon at that same military. He is also the president of the American Anti-Vivisection Society, which is a social rights organization that advocates for humane practice of the sciences, such as banning live animal testing. And he's also vice president of the Pennsylvania Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. The students at the operating theater broke into applause when the procedure succeeded. Woohoo! All but patients during the previous attempts that actually died. Martin got luck this time, but we shouldn't make such show of these surgeries. It's degrading and hard on the family, said one fellow surgeon. Morton disagreed, arguing that this is the most efficient way for students to learn such procedures. What the hell should we do? Let the students observe risky surgery. Tension is marginally increased, disease is marginally decreased. The relationships were suddenly improved in Star Wars, but worsened with the pilgrims. Bad students are not rated. Turning death into a learning experience strips its dignity. Relationships slightly improved with the pilgrims. Relations were into Star Wars. You should be praising Dr. Morton because he actually saved this guy's life for once, man. Okay? This should be encouraged, okay? I figure British just a bunch of pants. If you can't stand watching like freaking surgeries and figuring the side of freaking blood, then don't go out of a freaking operating theater, okay? Jesus Christ. Why is this whole city being populated by freaking Karens and Chads, man? Students love the operating theaters. Teaching hospitals are more effective, but also generate tension. Yeah, it's pretty much absent. No big deal. What about the patient dignity? The patient that lived, okay? Jesus Christ. We're not playing games! Okay, alright. Well, how about this? If you manage to survival, I promise to, set up some plaques and, commemorate the people who actually survived the surgery, okay? We can praise both the doctors and the patient. It's a win-win situation, alright? Speaking of which, let's see. What should I work on next? Let's see. Community service, resident support, heat pipe watch, server exceptions, guided voting. The steward may declare a Motion vitally important to the city's survival, curtailing debate, and convincing many wavering delegates to support it. Unlocks the guided voting procedure, which greatly increases the odds of passing a law in the council. This is known as a privilege motion in parliamentary procedure, in which urgent emergency matters are brought up before the council, takes precedence over ordinary business and other motions, and are not considered up for debate, unless the privilege is in question. It is called a privilege motion because it concerns about the rights, privileges, and convenience of the council and their delegates. Yeah, let's propose that law. Propose this law. Convenience. You go. Let's negotiate. Okay, who should I challenge here? Let's negotiate with the Stalwarts, since you're our most hesitant. Okay, let's propose this law. Young adults are encouraged to experiment, free from arbitrary bounds and judgment. Transferring slightly unlocks a youth employment program, the city ability, which bolsters the city's workforce, but decreases Heathtown's income. I do want kids learn some work skills before they graduate, so they can at least have some experience. You know what, let's enact a holiday known as Take Your Kids to Work Day, okay? That would be a good proposal, and a way to keep those youth motivated to join the workforce. Alright, let's vote on this one. Come on. I want to guide the voters, okay, people? I want to build a future for... It's the first time I got my law rejected. That's impossible. I tried. Oh yes, skyways. Right. I forgot about that. Take the skyways. Why do I always forget about that part? Alright. Let's explore the frozen bay. Oh, there may be more people here. Okay, let's launch an expedition to find more people. Then we can use those people to build some more frost teams. Yeah, that's gonna take 13 weeks and 6 days. Oh, it's full! Oh, that explains everything. Okay, guess we need to find a new cold stockpile. Or a hot stockpiles. Okay, material stock. Fuel stockpile. We 100 workers and 8 heat stats. Okay, we cut down heat. Oh, no, not that part. Oh, I have to research the greater youth after this. Shafts turned to normal use. Squadron was no longer reduced. Oh my. Uh-oh, no more coal! Our last mine has run dry! We have extracted all the coal in New London! The city must now rely entirely on food from FROSTNet. We need to find a long-term solution fast! We will survive! We will survive! Yeah! Oh, sorry, let me check the FROSTNet. Oh, it's still building. Okay. Oh, jeez, I need more cocoa. Oh, let's mobilize some deployed guys. Explosion time is extremely decreased. Let's do it. Alright, woohoo! And we're cut down time to 8 weeks. Woohoo! We reduced the travel time by 5 weeks. Alright, fellas. Everything's all good now. Oh yes, I need to tax the people. Okay, raise some funds. Okay, and then we use this to make a stockpile. Yes, fuel stockpile pod, and connect key. How much fuel we have left? 6 weeks! At least everything can serve us, except for the goods. Maybe cut it down here. Here. Yeah, we know. Guys, really the movement too. Wow, going for the first 6 weeks.
Please do not pilfer moss from the towers. It is crucial to the air filtration process.
Yeah, don't mess with the boss, guys. Let the actors handle this. Population increase. Oh, crap. Microphone before. Ah, shit. What the hell, Dr. Morton? You're doing so far. Sure, Dr. Morton, the teaching hospital surgeon who before the first successful infectectomy has attended the pink surgery again. But unfortunately, this time it failed.
Our boy was butchered in a cacophony of student comments and questions. This is inhumane.
Since when did the greatest American appendectomist become Robert Liston, the American surgeon who has been rumored to accidentally kill 3 people during a macabre surgery in an operating theater by transmitting gangrene to his amputated patient, chopping the fingers off his assistant, and scaring the observer with a fatal fainting spell?
You allow students to observe the risky procedures. I see.
It seems we are still lacking. This has been instructive for you all.
Yeah, maybe we're focused like this. You're totally fine, okay? Come on, guys. You're supposed to be like freaking professional here. What the hell are you doing, okay? You're supposed to be teaching the students, not freaking entertaining them. Jesus Christ. What the hell, Dr. Morton? I freaking trusted you, man. I bet you. Poor boy, sacrificed in the name of science.
His death won't be in vain. We must learn from it.
Yeah, you fucking better be, or else I'm gonna cut all your fucking limbs off. You're never gonna be practicing bringing medicine ever again. Okay, how's the instrument? Yeah, let's go it around here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Fucking Dr. Morton. Oh, I just get even more sick thinking about it. Alright, folks, we explore. Woohoo! Let's check it out. The others. In a cavern near the bay, we found a survey site. Bodies in sturdy frostland gear, neatly laid side by side and left to freeze. With black oil markings over their closed eyes. A ghastly burial ritual. Did we just finally struck oil? The map we found suggests they were heading to an old machine somewhere but a desolate coast. A machine that will require a source of fuel. We should investigate. I see. The fishing village, a community of frostlanders are hanging out a pitiful living off moss and small fish. With no furnace, they survive by sleeping shoulder to shoulder under a thick layers of fur. Yes, using each other's body warmth and hug each other in a totally non-gay heterosexual way. They were undoubtedly prefer to live in the New London. Yeah, let's take a minute, okay? Let's take all these freaking hobos in. I mean homeowners, okay? Not LGBT here. Oh, this guy's got cosplay and prosthetics though. I don't know. Resources only sent to New London. Harvest 100 food. Yeah, let's focus on exploring the new coast. The desolate coast. Hold on a second. Yeah, here goes too fast, guys. Very good. 5 frostbite teams here to harvest the food, and 10 more over here to launch an expedition to find some oil. Over the years, there were sightings of nomadic people roaming this area. Even if it be true, it is unlikely they would be survived so long on their own without a source of fuel. Well, if they couldn't make it out there, then how the heck did these people manage to go over there? If oil's all over their eyes, huh? Have you ever thought about that? Come on, guys. I thought you pilgrims were supposed to be freaking experts here. That guy just goes, oh, shit. Alright, I think I need to mobilize you for New London is the man's man. The New Londoners are delighted you kept your word. They now look upon your rule more positively and consider you leader with integrity. Just the materials we maximize. Okay, I can expand this a little bit further. Oh, no, shit. Yeah, there's not much we can do here. I might as well listen after this. For some cores. Okay, and what else is there? Optimize this. Optimize this. Optimize this. Alright, doing it right with excess. We're doing good, fellas. That's all we really need. We just need to do the housing part. Let's see. 200 people. How much we're making per week? Yeah, I might need another factory, so Yeah, the Rick from 100 PFAS. As soon as they finish dismantling the extraction district. How much will the coal last again? Let's see. 10 weeks! Shit. Dude, freaking Brock letters better hurry up. Hell up, man. Alright, we research something. Research liberated youth. 28 weeks. Youth. Liberated youth. Young adults are encouraged to experiment free from arbitrary bounds and judgments. To put this in a more socio-political context, liberated youth refers to the human rights and social development movement that aims to provide youth rights, or youth liberation, to children in the same traditional manner as adults, as well as abolishing certain legal minimum ages at which rights are required, such as voting age, driving age, age of candidacy, age of majority, and age of criminal responsibility, so that children are granted the autonomous liberty to make their own decisions in life without fear of societal judgment, condemnation, and ostracization. Though both youth rights movements and children's rights movements may seem to seek similar goals in achieving social progress for the current and future young generation, children's rights movements are more dependent on mature adult decision makers and social activists advocating for child protection and welfare, while youth rights movements are mostly run by the younger generation that push to gain civil liberties and rights normally permitted to adults. The fallacy of minimum age and arbitrary definition of maturity. The main reason behind the liberated youth advocacy is based on the counter-argument against the traditional family and political philosophy of adults always knows best, criticizing the falsifiability of the narrative that elders, politicians, lawmakers, and other authorities of the older generation knows what is best and worst for the future of the younger generation. Philosopher thinkers support youth liberation as an expansion of democratization that allows all individuals to speak for themselves without any fear of external interference or assumptions, nor any arbitrary rules and restrictions set by adult society with their chronological minimum age limits under legislation. According to the perspective of youth advocates, laws that are based on the belief of gradualism in mental development, for example, age of majority or legal age of adulthood, are just a means of arbitration and oppression against the youth, because it treats every new generation of young persons as carte blanche individuals who are in dire need of hard paternal guidance of adult professional supervision and absolute authority. Critics who are against traditionalist forms of youth development argue that each different individual reaches the critical threshold of mental and emotional maturity at different ages, with a probability chance of their peak development coinciding with their birthday being no more than 1 in 365 or 1 in 366 in leap years. This means that youth development and behavioral treatment should be based accordingly to the observations of each different individual, rather than by the arbitration set by their birth date, which could differ among various jurisdictions. Evolving capacities. As with children's rights, the youth liberation movement revolves around the youth development idea of evolving capacities, in which adults entrust children to exercise their human rights to act on their own behalf once they reach a stage of intellectual, emotional, and mental maturity, and will be responsible for allowing children to be given the right to freely open self-expression, protections from physical and social harm, and opportunities to explore their own purpose in life. This concept states that not all children will have the same universally fixed childhood experiences, and each unique child should be given different degrees of protection, supervision, harm prevention, and participation at different points in their lives before reaching maturity. Evolving capacities recognize that each child will acquire enhanced competencies throughout different stages in life, depending on the environment, conditions, and cultures from where they are raised in. Once their competency has been proven to be acquired, adults must show respect for their child's newfound gain in responsibility and maturity. If a child displays an innate special talent and curious interest, the parent or legal adult guardian should recognize and promote their child's potential and has the responsibility to nurture these skills to maintain their human rights and dignity, coalesce with their educational life experience, and foster their talents for future career prospects in adulthood.
At the same time though, adults should still protect children from experiences and decisions that they have not yet acquired nor possess the capacity to take on the responsibility for, until they are fully well educated and trained on handling such lifelong situations in adults' life. Their personal life experiences will gradually help children progress from their human rights to welfare and protection to gaining full responsibilities and liberty rights to make independent decisions on their own. Main issues faced by youth rights activists. The main principal problem in society that youth rights activists want to tackle is the deconstruction of outdated and traditional perceptions of youth by the older adult generation, as they consider these biased viewpoints as pedophobic and ephebophobic fear-mongering propaganda towards society, and thus deem morally oppressive to their youth development. In other words, societal laws that restrict freedoms, movements, and expressions among the new generation are based on the assumptions that the youth are incapable of making critical life choices and decisions on their own and need to be coddled, nurtured, and protected from their own irrational impulses and uncontrolled vices. Age restriction laws like military conscription, medical autonomy, corporal punishment, and child labor laws can provide a scope into how society treats their children. If these restrictions are not applied in the same manner to adults, these laws are deemed as status offenses, i.e. laws that only apply to a certain group of people, and thus will be criticized by the youth rights activists as a form of ageist discrimination. There are three main biases that youth advocates aim to tackle and dismantle in order to break the stigma against the younger generation. Number 1. Paternalism. The limitations on the autonomy and liberty of a person or group against their will as a means of promoting good within their conscience, building long-term autonomy, and promoting psychological and moral well-being. Philosophers like John Stuart Mill perceive paternalism as being necessary to protect persons from harm, but also argue that hard and impure forms of state-run paternalism would infringe on autonomy, even if the person reaches adulthood, and shows little respect for the person's individuality, independency, and competency. Though minimum paternalism like providing nutrition, warm shelter, and basic essentials would be beneficial, philosophers argue that state-run paternalism has a biased perception of individuals as being incapable of acting for their own good in the state, and demand independency and equal respect for every person's liberty. A common example would be medical paternalism, in which parents make medical decisions for their children under the assumption that the youth are incapable of rational thought and lacks the ability to take care of one's own health. If the person is deemed unconscious or mentally incompetent, the parents could make their medical decisions, but even if the child does show a sense of rationality and maturity, they could still be barred from receiving crucial information under the law of therapeutic privilege. That is, the medical information could mentally scar the child patient. Number 2. Ageism. Type of discrimination based on the age of the individual or group. Though it is usually refers to the stereotypical treatment of elderly people, ageism can also apply to the discrimination of young adolescents and children, such as dismissing their ideas and contributions to society as being too naive, immature, and imbecilic. Ageist forms of discrimination against the youth include exclusive punishments, burdens, or restrictions imposed more onto children than onto older people, such as age-based political party registration. Number 3. Adultism, a subtype form of ageism that involves a systematic bias, prejudice, and discrimination against the youth, and the sometimes abusive empowerment of adults controlling the lives and actions of children. Even if the youth are supposedly praised for their greater vitality and physical beauty, they are less desired by the adult world as they deem them lacking in intellectual vigor and moral superiority. The fear of the generation of infant and children overtaking the adult community is known as pedophobia, and the prejudicial fear of young adolescents and teenagers overcoming elderly authority is known as ephebiphobia. Adultism can come in a spectrum range of age-related biases, which includes, from start to finish, adult-centrism, or egocentrism of adult individuals, adultocracy, which is the social convention that mature adults should preside over the lives of the younger generation, gerontocracy, an oligarchic rule of leaders whose generation is older than the majority of the adult subjects, and finally, chronocentrism, which is the belief that the current state of humanity is superior than the rest of the previous and or future generations. In addition to dealing with criticisms, skeptical doubts, and the prejudicial discrimination from the adult and elderly generation, youth rights activists in New London would tackle numerous school-related issues such as addressing bullying and abusive treatment by other students, teachers, and staff at mandatory schools, alternate schools for children or young adults with special needs such as remedial education, or naturally gifted talents such as vocational training schools, abolishment or at least reasonable limitations of corporal punishment as a form of disciplinary and behavioral correction, criminalization of child exploitation such as abolishing forced child labor and mandatory marriage laws, and finally, advocating for policies that promote in loco parentis or in place of parent for orphaned or boarded school children without infringing on civil liberties, freedom of speech, and personal privacy. Other miscellaneous youth issues emphasized in New London may also include mandatory allowance for child welfare, charity projects, and activity programs run by liberal youth organizations, permitting children to freely learn heat stat management and financial literacy through hands-on experience, and abolishment of authoritarian parenting, which uses high-pressure demands with minimal feedback, harsh punishment, and strict obedience as a method of youth development. The common strategies and tactics of youth liberation movements. To build trust with the elderly community, youth activists would organize, establish, and run various organizations, events, public venues, and other charitable projects with only minimum adult supervision who are only interested to handle the advanced professional adult tasks. Youth programs and organizations, which usually consist of members of ages 10 to 25, engage in public activities orientated towards encouraging youth development among the prepubescents and adolescents, often through recreational events, social gatherings, life crisis prevention and intervention, and informal education. Popular public activities among the youth in New London can include winter sports like skiing, hockey, or ice skating, volunteer community service, student activism for social and political change, and outdoor field trips into the Frostlands. Just like how the New London Council engages in political debates and parliamentary discussions on how to run a city in the post-apocalyptic era, youth groups can also run their own parliamentary youth councils as a collective way to express their youth voice on ideas, opinions, attitudes, and knowledge on the current political climate. Like the council, the youth parliament consists of young adolescent elected bodies from schools, charities, or NGOs, or non-governmental organizations, from each local district, community, and/or faction. Various election voting practices of youth does vary across different districts, with some elected bodies being chosen by their own community itself, while others are handpicked by local political officials or top members of a youth NGO. Some youth parliaments may even pair up with a children's parliament, consisting of people as young as 5 years old, to act as an advisory board for the older children and young adult delegates. Though the New London Council would be less inclined to allow the youth to directly engage in politics, members of the youth parliament are allowed to act as a consultancy board for their favorite council representative delegates. Student activism plays an active role in pushing for political, environmental, economic, and social change through organized rallies or protest marches held by a student representative council or a student union. The main issues highlighted by a student activist include education reform, changes in school policy, such as higher food rations for seniors, anti-bullying enforcement, children's rights, government reform, and better access to educational resources. Saying YEP to the Youth Employment Program. YEP is the New London government-funded program that engages in a progressive social measure known as positive youth development and allows young adults to join the workforce and gain real-life working skills, social experience, and first-hand knowledge for upcoming career prospects in adulthood. In the city of New London, the post-apocalyptic prospects provided by YEP for the aspiring and disadvantaged youth may include automaton code programming, industrial equipment maintenance, hothouse farming and livestock breeding, Arctic Scout vehicle repairs training, prefabs construction workshops, after-school job training courses, and homemaking crafts apprenticeships. Similarly, in the real world, there does exist an actual equivalent program called the Youth Employment Service, or YES, in Canada, which was founded in 1968 in the city of Toronto, Ontario, not to be confused with a similar organization of the same name in the United Kingdom that ran from the 1950s to 1970s. Originated in the 1960s in an era where the youth were alienated and ostracized for their hippie culture lifestyle, a social organization known as the Rotary Club of Toronto, or RTC, was one of the first social organizations to deal with the sudden rise in unemployed youth who grew up since the baby boom generation of the 1940s. Though the labor supplies was very high in the market, most of the workplaces were unwilling to accept the large influx of young adolescents into the workforce so readily, leading to most of them dropping out of public school and transitioning into the work-free hippie lifestyle, similar to the anti-establishment bohemians who wanted to escape the materialism, consumerism, and the conventional noble lord's lifestyle during the mid-19th century. Upon surveying and researching on the plight of the unemployed youth, the Rotary Club of Toronto realized that each individual youth required specialized care and training to fit their specific needs, and thus created the Youth Employment Service as an employment agency for the marginalized and alienated high school to college grade students and dropouts. A few decades after their foundation, YES opened the first Youth Business Center in 1998 to help aspiring young entrepreneurs in starting their own capitalist ventures, and provided startup loans and business skills training courses to help lay new foundations of their entrepreneurship. As of today, the funding from the Government of Canada, Province of Ontario, and other youth-based NGOs has allowed YES to expand their diverse operations of assistance to the youth workforce and multiple job skills training programs for the youth, such as informational tech training, artificial intelligent machine coding, trading school, professional financial literacy courses, youth empowerment seminars, mental health counseling, and corporate apprenticeship programs. So what kind of benefits should we expect from the Liberated Youth program? Well, there's social progress in communities of all ages. Positive youth development promotes optimal human development within youth through encouragement of their potential strengths, creativity, and passions within at-risk children and adolescents, rather than through adversarial behavioral correction programs under a problem-orientated lens. Forging relations with all communities and factions, youth are perceived as allies, agents, and assets that can be encouraged into contributing to society through civic management, community engagement, and social conflict resolutions. Examples would be setting up festivals as an outlet for youth recreation to curb alcohol or drug use, volunteering at homeless shelters, and fundraising for park projects. Trust management and build-up. Improving community relations also raises trust with the youth by constructing pro-social bonds between young adolescents and adults, promoting intergenerational equity, that is, fairness and justice between the young and elderly generation, combating against pedophobia and amphibophobia within the adult community, and finally, establishing youth-adult partnerships that are essential for co-creating new curriculum, community activities, and civic programs. And finally, thriving future development. By taking on a more humane welfare approach, youth liberation nurtures wellness, safety, and healthy maturation of young individuals through positive reinforcement, which will lead to improved psychological, social, and emotional stability in the future for the youth once they enter the adult stage of development. So what are the downsides of a liberated youth program? Well, New London will be expecting large expenditures on youth programs. The YEP requires significant government resources to run multiple special programs to motivate youth development and boost the employment rate for all young individuals with their own specific needs, skills, and mindset. Those funds are required to pay off salaries for the service-based youth development team, such as teachers, university professors, educational specialists, financial advisors, board of directors, counselors, workplace managers, and scholarly mentors. Socio-structural inequalities. Despite the buildup of community trust with the developing youth, some adult educational staff are hesitant to allow scholars to participate in youth activism, even as socio-political tensions run high within the city. As most issues highlighted by the youth are usually focused around social problems that remain ignored, underreported, or misrepresented by the adults, Most of the problems faced by the youth, or even multiple generations, goes largely unnoticed as they are probably discussed in private social clubs on school campuses, or away from skeptical adult society who are hesitant to educate their pupils on current ongoing events over fears of government reprisals. Since the student clubs still require an adult advisor to officiate their group, this creates a hierarchical imbalance that suppresses their ability to make their youth voice heard and prevents engagement in political debate on school grounds or the public domain. Because youth parliament has no actual power to affect real change in city government, some aspiring scholars may choose to join a student union, or alternatively, a youth union organization that operates outside of official grounds, which will provide a real youth voice to the people and directly represent their viewpoints to the administrative body of the government. Misrepresentations of youth liberation. Skeptical detractors opposing to youth liberation incorrectly believe that the movement would encourage disobedience to authority, contribute to criminal delinquency, trigger government shutdown, and eventually induce chaotic anarchy, exploiting on the pedophobia and amphibophobia among living past generations. Families of the older generation are also afraid that the youth liberation would increase risk of harm to children as they are exposed to the adult world too early in life and should not be free to explore the dark, explicit realities of adulthood, especially in the harsh socio-political environment of a post-apocalyptic society. Older generations who were previously subjected to authoritarian styles of parenting in their past lives, before and during the early era of the Great Frost, would argue that harsh discipline, strict obedience, and adherence to the old social order was how New Londoners were able to thrive and survive the winter apocalypse. Youth rights activists counter-argue that false negative fallacy with the fact that youth liberation is about advocating for different alternate styles of parenting, paternal guidance, and children's rights legislation that promote liberal thinking, freedom, self-expression, and self-exploration among the new young generation, while also providing reasonable protections and social welfare for youth that enables them to exercise those liberties without risk of harm and exploitation. Advocates emphasize that children should not be treated as blank slates with no independent thought, will, nor understanding, and should not be subjected to arbitrary means of authoritative control. In other words, the parents and the guiding authorities should treat children as valuable human contributors to society, and not as subhuman possessions and tools that need to be forcibly remolded under authoritarian oversight in order to conform them according to societal expectations. New generations of youth would also argue that a progressive society that nurtures young talent, creativity, life vigor, and curiosity, instead of stifling or suppressing them, could also be another means of human survival, because a liberated youth could reinvent and reform new ideas, inventions, infrastructures, and organizations that can protect humanity from the harsh elements of the apocalypse through encouragement of community action and constructing trust bonds among the currently multiple living generations.
Let's research this idea. Okay guys, I think I should be stopping over here because I am way past my limit here and I'm kind of running low on cocoa, so I guess it's really safe to say you don't have to live in New London, you don't have to work in New London, you don't even have to follow me or even vote for me in New London. You still miss your fishing village or love to huddle together with your boyfriend/girlfriend or your home makeshift like a furry animal doll to keep yourselves warm at nights. I don't know. I mean, I'm not judging you. You do you, boo. Then go on right ahead. This is Young Steward Z signing off. Until next time. And remember, fellas, stay frosty.